Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Suzanne Payne.
This month, we're talking about the first volume of Rat Queens, a swaggering D&D style fantasy adventure by writer Curtis J. Weeb, artist Rock Upchurch, and letterer Ed Brisson. Now, in case you need a refresher, Rat Queen stars a group of rough-and-tumble female adventurers who cause just as many problems as they solve. The Queen's penchant for chaos makes them the target of paid assassins, but just who paid for those assassins? Guys, this was a tough one to write a plot synopsis for, not, usually when they're tough to write a synopsis for, it's because, a lot happened.
You don't want to give away too much with this one?
Yeah. Well, no, there's, nothing really, stuff happens, but, that's not really what the book is about. The book is about the Rat Queens.
Yeah.
So it was tough. It's a hangout fun times 4 cool female leads book, which Suzanne picked for the podcast. Suzanne, welcome back.
Hi.
How you doing?
Overall, good. I've been up since 4:15 this morning.
Nice.
Oh man, you got me beat. I've been getting up at 5:30, and that wrecks me. So.
But are you choosing to get up at that time?
Choosing is a strong word for it, honestly. But let's say yes. I have the option not if I don't want to, but I would miss out on walking my dog or the ability to take a shower before I have to drop my wife off at work so I can go to work.
Yeah. It's not fully my choice. There's someone else who is causing the early wake-ups, who is currently having a rough time, it sounds like.
It's totally Simon. Yeah.
It's totally Simon. Simon, is always,
early to rise.
so much so he's totally not just sleeping the entire time when everything's happening.
Suzanne, how'd this book get on your radar? What made you want to read this book?
So when you guys were asking about when I wanted to record and what I was looking for, I literally Googled strong women comics. Because I feel like I have a certain aesthetic to keep going on here, right? I do a lot of floofy girl comics, I would say, is my main thing. And I had first thought about doing the gem and the holograms, but I thought maybe that's just too similar to what I've done in the past. And this one just came up, and I was very intrigued by the term rockabilly and hipster. And I was like, oh, this could be fun. And in Goodreads, it was the 8th recommended or something like that too. So I was just like, let's give it a try.
8th recommended in what list? What context? It's not the 8th most recommended book on Goodreads, right?
I mean, right? I don't even know what the thing was.
I mean, Goodreads is a wild mess from what I know, but that's a different podcast.
So, yeah, it was on that list, and I was like, hey, this looks interesting. Let's give it a try. So that's where I got to.
Okay. Well, what did you think?
It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, for sure. I thought that there was going to be a little bit more of a D&D adventure into it. And obviously it started with them introducing these adventurer groups that they only talked about really 3 of them in total. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is the start. This is where they're going to go now. And it's going to be this is the inciting incident of their adventures. And it didn't really turn out like that. I did end up reading some of the other volumes to try to get more of an understanding of the story and the characters. And I was talking to Simon, and I'm like, I think I missed something because I went from this volume to this volume, and I have no fucking clue what's going on.
I wonder if... No, because I mean, this is a weird book, Susan. Background info, for a lot of various reasons, this book came out for a while, and we'll get deeper into some of this as we go, I think, but came out for a while, switched artists 3 times.
Yeah.
Took a hiatus, came back with a new volume, forswore the issue 16 of the first volume to the point where the writer was like, this will never be reprinted. It's going to get reprinted.
You can't find it. And, like, that's what happened, like, I read volumes 1 and volume 2 and volume 3 of, like, the collections, and, like, volume 2 I thought was, like, pretty good, except, like, they really built stuff up and then it just stopped, and they're like, "This is how it ends." And then, like, volume 3, they're like, Hannah goes to the college and her dad that's not her dad, but is her dad, was in a void. And then, like, it's leading up to now she's, like, shaved her head and she's like, "I don't care what you girls say about me, da da." And then it's just, like, done. And nothing is ever said about it again. And I'm like, did she get her dad out? Is he her dad? Why are
Yeah,
they
they
calling
just kind of
her?
like jump back to a completely different story, I think, in
Yeah,
volume
because
4, which is like
volume 4 is,
really,
like, the reboot,
yeah,
they
but it's also
say.
not a reboot, I think, because like so the writer was saying that like there was no way to make issue 16 like exist in continuity with what they want to do going forward in the new volume. So they just kind of like wipe that issue out and go in a
But
completely different
appar
direction. I think
and, like,
I've read through
unf
volume 3 at some point, but it's been a long time since I read past
yeah.
volume 1.
Well, and then I tried to, like, read volume 4, and it's just, like, it makes no sense. It's like an alternate universe, and when you go on forums and try to find out about that issue 16, that elusive issue 16, people said that that issue 16, you could just tell there was something going on between the writers, the artists, and everything like that, and then there's just this big, like, people weren't working together. And I mean, it kind of is like that. It's like all these people got together and made these stories about these women, and they didn't talk about what the women were about, like
Yeah,
the
kind of.
personalities or like have a story arc. Like if you think about like the cinematic universe even, right? Those are all different arcs. There's they
And
start
so
an arc and they don't finish it.
the wildest thing to me with this book as a series, like as like an Image creator owned series, is that it completely switches creative team like in volume
So
7 of the
much.
run. Well, like no, so like an Image book is like different than a Marvel and DC book where like DC owns the property Batman and they hire writer A for a little bit. Writer A plays out, you hire writer B. Writer B is paired with artist C, who stays on for a while and goes with writer C. Like that, like mix and match of creative teams is like even part of the appeal of like a
Well,
mainstream
because then
superhero
like each
comic.
writer is allowed to give like their own idea for
Interpretation of the character,
yeah,
yeah.
and, like, isn't that where they started, like, the multiverse kind of thing coming from? Like, this
Ish.
writer like, that's kinda where it evolved from a little bit, right? Because this person wants to write about this way, and they kill Superman, but this person doesn't want Superman to be dead, so now this is what we're gonna like
It's definitely an aspect of how it's used now, for sure. Like,
yeah, but, like, this one, it was like they were just sending, like, cliff notes to each other.
well, this one's weird because like Image Comics books specifically, for the most part, outside of like the initial 90s era stuff when Image was starting, is very much the creators come to Image with a pitch, say, hey, we want to do this book. This is our book. We retain the rights. I don't even know how the rights would work in this series. And like, we're going to do the
Yeah.
series. It ends here. It's done. This book becomes like a licensed property book essentially by volume 7, where it's written by a completely different person than the original writer and drawn by a completely different person than the original artist. And it's just not how
Yeah.
Image books function. I was trying to think of how to like pitch this to like say Pat as a person who has read some Image books, and it's like if Saga in volume 12 decided to jump to being a Kieran Gillen book with art by who's an artist we've had? Marcos Martin. Imagine if that just happened in the middle of Saga. Like what the hell?
Or, like, if you had, like, a designated novel series, so, like, Game of Thrones or Harry Potter, and all of a sudden it went from being, like, this fantasy epic sort of thing to, like, history
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something.
or like another thing, like is Wheel of Time the one that got finished by a different writer? Might be. I don't know. There's a series that
Mm.
got finished by a completely different writer. Was it Sanderson finished someone else's
It's the Wheel
series?
of Time. Yeah.
Is it Wheel of Time?
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, like and to your larger point, like nothing happens in this book that's particularly interesting. Like the most interesting part of the book is definitely the characters and their interactions with each other.
Yeah, or
But
like
otherwise, it's
anything
very much
that
like Baby's first D&D campaign.
Yeah.
or like anything that would make you want to pick up the next book. Like I picked up the next book because I wanted to see if they developed anything. I was intrigued to learn more about the characters, not so much the story.
Yeah, and I think there's some good hooks in that regard, which maybe you were just about to talk about before I cut you off.
I was really intrigued that you called Sawyer McDreamy because the first thing I said to Simon, I was like, "Oh, the character, the castle guard here, he'd be played by the Jean whatever whatever who was the Duke from Bridgerton."
Oh,
Like,
he totally would, yeah. Who is
mhm.
in the D&D movie also, right?
Right?
Like,
And he was
yeah.
fantastic. Like, he was one of my favorite parts of the D&D movie, I'm just
Oh yeah,
gonna
he was
say.
great.
I was just like, this is the role that was made for him. Like,
Yeah, now
he
that you
is
say it, that's perfect.
right. And so, like, the second volume, like, deals with Sawyer a bit more, and, like, they hint to the relationship between Hannah and he, and then I think he's, like, in a half second of the third volume, but then, like, they just left it. I'm like, he's an interesting character.
Yeah, and like that's one of the hooks going forward for sure. Like Violet's twin brother and proclivity
Very.
for shaving her beard off is one of the hooks going forward.
Yeah,
Like
and then also Betty was part of a rogue gang called the Monkeys or something,
Well,
and
that's in the future volume.
yeah,
That
that's
if I remember
later on, I
right.
is
think.
well, it was brought up in one of the other ones. One of the ones I read, they talked about it and how she was being framed for something. I think it was when they were at the college. So that was probably the third volume, probably. And so I was just like, okay, now we have this about her. And I'm like, you have these fantastic characters. Why am I not learning more? Please? Yeah.
I mean, I think they did an okay job in the
I was
first
gonna say for the
volume.
first volume, I feel like we got a good piece
Right?
of
We got
everyone.
a
And
Like
feel of who they were, and then there's
I
ties, like we were
I
talking about.
felt more let down as I tried to keep going to learn more because you don't expect the first ones to give you everything, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it hooked me in some way. Maybe it was just
I
the
mean,
fact
you
that I
read at
connected right
least two
away.
more volumes. Well, three, right? Because you went
I
into four. So
I think I tried to read 4, and more so, like, once I read about Hannah's dad being in the void, I'm like, "Well, I gotta find out, like, is he her dad? Is he not her dad?" Like, I wanted that answered, and it was not answered. So then I felt let down.
yeah, I mean the travails of this comic are a thing. I guess we should probably just get the other part of that discussion out of the way too. Like that basically the original artist on this Rock Upchurch, who also goes by John Upchurch, was I think arrested for assaulted his wife, like
He or
Mhm.
he was at
admitted to
least
it.
tried. I don't remember what the if they ever said that there was an outcome for it. I mean,
Yeah,
does
I
it
don't
matter
I
if
don't
an
honestly
outcome
know either, but
came?
basically like got kicked off the book as a result.
Yeah, and then when they had a Tess Fowers, I think,
Fowler, yeah.
came into, and then she said she was kicked off, but then another guy was like, "No, we didn't kick her off. Like she left because she was mad." And there was a lot of like he said, she said stuff in the background, it seems like.
So the hearsay story that I read, which again is just all internet rambling readings, and I don't know how true this part is or not, but like is that basically Tess Fowler says she was like sort of being pushed off the book so that Curtis Weeb could bring Rock Up Church back. And then eventually I don't think Rock Up Church did come back initially, but like they definitely did do recently a one shot wrapping up the story, and it's Curtis Weeb and Rock Up Church. And part of that's actually part of why when the Image Comics workers formed a union, one of their demands was like, hey, we want to be able to like veto books by people that shouldn't be making books here because like they morally shouldn't like at the same time Image had also greenlit a new Warren Ellis book, and Pat and Kat and I talked about Warren Ellis for a very long time in our Next Wave episode. But similar concerns there were not great to women overall. So
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like, obviously some people get the four main characters as like super empowering characters, but then also are they maybe not as empowering as we think, and they're supposed to be like stereotypes of what bad women are? I don't know. I
I
don't
mean,
want to think that, but
I was talking to Matt about this earlier. It's when I first read this, I certainly enjoyed it much more now than going back to it. It really has to feel like Joss Whedon and Buffy, like writing really powerful female character, but you find out that the creator has his issues with women. So how are you
yes.
supposed to feel about the character?
And like it's not
Yeah.
just us also, like this book won a GLAAD award. Like this book
I
has
Yeah.
been
mean,
like called out by like multiple sources as being like a quote unquote like good, empowering, like showing off diversity book. Like there's a quote from the Mary Sue on the back, which is like a noted like
Yeah.
feminist comics outlet.
well, and then you have like interracial couples, you have homosexual couples, like you have a transgender character. And then even like the character of the Daves are really interesting. Because there's like a single issue on Healer Dave and like his background, and that's just intriguing as well. You have these characters that you want to be excited about, but then you have the ickiness of the person who created it, right? Kind of the same thing that happens with Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling, right? You have
Mhm.
such this nostalgia and what the characters meant to you, but J.K. Rowling's an awful person,
Just doesn't know how to shut up. That's the problem.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like, does this mean that I can't like these characters for what they mean to me? It's one of those things, right? You don't want to give something to someone that you don't support, but there's also something about what they created that connects with you. And
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, we talked about this for a long time on the Next Wave episode. It basically came to the decision where like everyone kind of has to draw their own line with certain things.
yeah.
So there's that. But like I don't know, the like part of the thing with this one in specifically for me is that there's so many good comparable stories that like, and especially because like we've talked about, the actual story and art and relationship between the creators seems to go off the rails in this later too, like in later volumes. Like
Yeah.
we're jumping ahead maybe a little bit, but like I wouldn't probably recommend someone pick up this book. Like I enjoyed reading this book again. Like there were bits of it that made me like a little bit like made me cringe a little. The art is a little rough in places. Like it's fun, but
Yeah.
like if someone was like, "Should I read that?" I would probably be like, "No, you should read this instead or read that instead." Like cuz there's lots of different reasons for that.
Yeah. Well, and then like I think about like Fables, right? Fables had 20 plus paperback volumes. And even though they had so many characters that they followed, like that story was just so complete. If you really want a complete story where you understand each character, where they come from, their motivation, and what happens to them, this won't work for you. And I feel like I'm a very like character driven like reader.
Which is
Sure.
kind of funny because, like, reading this Suzanne, I feel like the only reason that I would want to read more of it is because of the characters in the
Right?
first volume. Because, like I said, like otherwise, like it's very much a light sketch of like a generic D&D world. Like it kind of feels at times like someone basically cleaned up their D&D campaign and made it into a comic, which is totally a way that people make fiction and it works really
Yeah.
well. So I'm no shade
Yeah.
on that. Like that's fine. But like it has that vibe for sure. Like the four Daves, like that's totally like a GM who
Oh,
threw it together was like, they're all named Dave.
the
Great.
4 Daves are so hilarious to me, and, like, they don't have that much in that part, but it's just like, "All right, Dave, are you ready? I'll follow you to the end, Dave. Yep, Dave, we got it." And then, like, Healer Dave, who is orc,
Mhm.
like, he's kind of like a
Yeah.
druid healer, because like, all of his spells, if you go back, are all bird-based. So, like, in the background, like, he's in the background image and he's casting these ravens at the other orcs that they're destroying. And it's so cool in that image, but it's in the back. And I'm just like, oh, I want to see that. Can we, that one? But instead, you don't get to. And
Well,
then he has
instead you get to see the
bluebirds.
floating naked lady. So still written by guys.
That was kind of funny too, because they're like, ha, floated naked lady works every time. And like, that was kind of like, Okay, we can take that, right? And then there was also a joke about like what kind of hand was being used, which I thought was really funny because like the helping hand um, spell that's used like almost in every D&D campaign ever, right?
Yeah.
Just by Pat's characters.
Always. It's a useful spell.
I will say, Pat, that Hannah gives me a Patrick D&D character vibe for sure.
Hey, man.
Basically, just anytime anyone tries to talk to her, she responds with an "up yours." That's a Pat
Sarcasm.
character.
Yeah.
Spellcaster with an attitude problem. That is usually what I go for. It's true.
A spellcaster who made a pact with a demon
Don't know that, Susie. You keep jumping ahead.
that
Yeah,
gave her
Suzanne, we gotta talk
more.
about Volume 1, Suzanne. That's what we're here to give the
Okay,
people
but
discussion
volume
of.
1. Sorry, I should. Okay. So volume 1. Uh, they have a party, and there's lots of stuff about mushrooms.
There's so much stuff about mushrooms.
Yeah, I
This
wasn't
book has
like.
like so much like try hard edgy vibes to me that like I feel like I was willing to forgive when I was a younger man, and now I'm just
I
like
feel like this hit
try
at
hard
the
edgy vibes.
it hit at the exact right moment for this. Like this was before Critical Role was even out.
Yeah.
So like this basically started the ball rolling with this more cat like I don't know, flippant look at what fantasy could be. And I
Yeah,
think it's now we've got an entire genre, entire like field of media that's focused on this.
doing this thing and also doing it better probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just doing like a traditional D&D campaign look.
Yeah.
Like they tried
Mhm.
to do something a little different with it.
Well, also like a decent amount of the book's appeal, I guess, is like, hey, there's booze and drugs and they're swearing and like I don't know. I've never really been that into that, but at this point I'm like basically the Rat Queens are the villain of this story to me. Like
Well,
Yeah.
I sympathize with old lady Bernadette, who is
old
only
lady Bernadette.
5 years older
I'm
than me
I'm not
now,
even that
as
old.
opposed to 11 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and it would have been really cool. So like when they do like the little groups, right? You have the Rat Queens, and then you have Peaches that you learn only about Tizzy and Braga from. And then
Yeah.
you have the four Daves, and then you have the brother ponies. They all have ponytails. It's great.
Like so that's part of the thing to me too is like that scene felt very much like a GM threw some adventuring parties together and each one of them has a gimmick that defines the entire party and the Rat Queens don't really have a gimmick that defines the entire party so it's like wow I wonder
No.
which one of these is the main characters of the book.
Yeah. Oh, and then Obsidian Darkness. They're like the emo kid table.
I mean they're the throwaways. They get
You
killed
see
within
them,
like 2
well,
pages from that.
the next page or something like that. But you never get to find out what happened to the brother ponies. That makes me disappointed.
Oh no, you do. They died.
Did they die? Did they say that they
Yeah.
died?
Yeah. This turns out writing 16 characters and keeping track of them really hard. So you kill half of them immediately for sure, and
Yeah.
then a couple more for good measure.
Well, because I know that like the 4 Daves come in and they just say like, "Oh, the 4 Daves made it. Don't see anyone else." So I guess they're just assuming. But what if the brother ponies just ran away together in their
Yeah, maybe they
ponytails and
escaped and decided that they shouldn't stay in the shithole town where people are trying to assassinate them, which is probably a better choice.
yeah, right?
Looking through this, I gotta say, I think Betty is my least favorite Rat Queen.
I was actually just about to ask you who your most favorite Rat Queen was, so let's do that too over here.
Okay.
Who's your most favorite Rat Queen?
I would probably say that my favorite is Violet, but I also think she's the one that's closest to the D&D characters I play.
Nice.
So that could be why she's my favorite.
When you
But
say closest, what qualities are you talking about?
um I feel she tends to be the least harsh of them. And then she is somewhat paladin-esque. I say paladin-esque because obviously, like, not 100%.
None of them are
Um,
good people, yeah.
Yeah.
no, but um, I don't know. There's just something about Violet that rubs me differently. The only other one that I would say like would be D. But I just think there's something about Violet's character that connected with me more. I Betty annoyed me. Like they were trying too hard to be like, "Oh, I'm a druggie." Ugh." Like that's just how I felt about Betty all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of did
And
too,
then
honestly.
They tried to
Yeah,
Hannah,
humanize
not
her.
so. I guess not so much like, oh, I'm a druggie. But it's just like Betty's a bit much. I guess is where
there
I was
well
at.
like that was like her only personality. But then like when you saw hints of her being like this like rogue extraordinaire, like those were kind of fun and cool. But then she's just like, here's my candy and my alcohol.
Yeah, every once
I
in a
mean, when
while,
she
Betty's
was
kind.
serious with when she was serious with
Yeah.
her love interest, the woman
But
that Hannah pissed off, I liked her
Yeah, and
more.
like when she surveilled the merchant guild guy too, and noticed like, hey, he's not wearing a wedding ring anymore, and like that's kind of
yeah.
sad. Like that was
Like
a nice
She
little
did her
kind
rogue
moment.
investigation and got high because she's got expertise.
yeah, so like those were cool moments with her, but otherwise it was just like I, eh, get rid of Betty.
Yeah, I would agree. She's a bit much.
Poor
And then
Betty.
like obviously Hannah is intriguing, but I don't always go for like the bitchy characters.
Matt, who's
And
your favorite
she's
rat queen?
I'm gonna guess it's Hannah.
I mean, I mean, I like Hannah
Hmm.
more in future volumes, obviously, because the story
You
sort of centers around her eventually.
yeah.
Uh, but I mean, I like D as well. I like the idea of
An
an
atheist cleric who still uses her god's power.
yeah, so like a cultist who's renounced her god, but is still practicing as a cleric. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's one of
Yeah.
the best hooks for me going forward is that the flashback scene between Dee and her mom, I
Her
believe,
mother,
where
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where Dee's leaving home and saying she has to go find answers. Like
and when her mother's trying to be reassuring that her god will always be there. It's
yeah,
like, is that
but
a
phrase it in such a way that he
is
will
that a
always
threat?
find you.
Is it a threat or is it a good thing? I don't know.
It can be both, Pat. It's
Yeah,
both.
I
it
mean,
works in
but
mysterious ways.
does that just go to like small town millennial life in general, right?
I'm sure.
Like
Yeah, as a person who has renounced religion, this connected with me.
well, and like I would say like obviously I taught at a Catholic school for 9 years. Was it necessarily by like choice that I was seeking out to teach at a Catholic school? No. Um, but I wouldn't consider myself like Christian or like religious as opposed to like spiritual. So I in that case I kind of like feel connected to D and like her that it kind of goes along with that. But it's
He's
like
also socially awkward, which I
which
appreciated.
I am also socially
This
awkward
book is
too.
my party. Get out of my party.
And I thought that was funny too. And like when the guy tried to talk to her, she's like, ah. But yeah. What about you, Matthew?
I'm also between Dee and Hannah, I think. I think Hannah would be a terrible person to know in real life, but she's
Oh,
Yeah.
fun
for
in the
sure.
book.
Yeah.
um, but again, like Dee, I think has aspects that we already talked about that I connect with. I don't know. I like a party every now and then, I guess. But there are days that I just actually Kat invited me to go out to a thing with her tonight, and I was like, I haven't gotten to just like be at home for like a couple hours all week, and I'm gonna do that before we record a podcast. So go have fun. Yeah, Hannah is fun and like very like I don't know. She has I think probably the best lines in the entire book. Like I wrote down my favorite line, which was oh no, actually it was from Pizzy is her name, right? But it's directed at Hannah because she and Hannah are doing like one-liners at each other at
Oh, the
this
thorn
point.
Oh,
bush.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hannah, I'm an inch from conjuring a thorn bush into your asshole. It's like
Yeah.
that's funny.
I did like the random Gary.
Oh yeah, that was so funny. The
Shut up, Gary.
shut up, Gary.
That
The
sequence
Ford.
actually really confused me initially, where the troll girlfriend shows up and is
Yeah.
like, "He told me." I was like, "The dead boyfriend told you?" But no, it's pointing at Gary,
That's
so that
Gary.
makes
Yeah.
more sense. Oh,
Way to go,
Gary.
Gary. Way to
Come
go.
on, Gary.
Well, and I like that they keep that as a running gag in at least the next volume, I think. They make jokes about Gary again.
There's like a little quip at the end of the stories or beginning Something like a +5 to attack guys named Gary or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
+5 to anyone named attacks against anyone named Gary.
It's there, like all the things that make this genre work is there, but it really does feel like a first iteration of it, like the first time.
Yeah, it's rough around the edges. Like off mic, Pat and I were talking about the scene where Violet's like chopping fruit, and I'm just trying to figure out how her arm is possibly in that position to hold that knife in that scene. Like,
I think it's her
I like
thumb we're
she's,
looking at.
but that's not. That
I
doesn't.
think the artist just gave up on drawing the rest of the hand.
I don't know, man. And like the
Hands are
foreshortening's not good
hard.
either. Hands are very hard. Again, like we critique on this podcast, and could I do
Oh.
it? No, but
Again, jumping to future volumes, I like Fowler's art a lot better than this, and I think it works.
yeah, I think it's much
better.
better. Like having looked at it.
It's
And
really, she
like
does a
even
very good job.
it's I'm gonna butcher his name, but Stepan Sejic on volume 2, right? And like that art is, from what I remember, horny as fuck because that's what
Well,
Stepan Sejic does, but like it probably
and
works for
then
this series.
It does.
I'm also pretty sure that like the girls' faces all become like hyper feminine.
Yeah, that sounds like a Stepan Sejic book to me.
Yeah.
And I think one of the like the charms at first is that they aren't hyper feminine. Like they look kind of rough and tumble a little bit.
Here and there, like I don't know. I was trying to decide whether that was true on this read of the book or not, because like you still just got like fantasy female clothes all up in this. Like there's some boob armor, there's some no pants, there's some like, and I mean
Yeah, but
it's the genre, but how much
yeah.
of that is it's the genre and that's an excuse, and how much of it is like, look, they're tough empowered female characters, but they still just don't wear pants. Why don't they wear pants?
But like when you look at them, they are not all the same body type.
Yes, this is true for sure, and like
And
different
like
heights, different
uh
widths.
but there was literally I can't remember what volume it was, but like they all had like the cupid bow lips and they all had like eyelashes and like the cute little nose. Then they almost looked the same as each other instead of unique. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, talking about cute little nose, I didn't like the style of how noses are drawn in this. I had forgotten that they're all like, they all look like they're cold.
Oh, the
They
Yeah.
red
have a
noses.
cold. Yeah.
They all do that trend from like 3 years ago where people would put blush on their nose.
Yeah. They
Was
all
that
have
such
just
a
like,
thing?
It was.
Huh. The more
which
you
is,
learn.
it's an art choice, which is fine. But
Well, they're
um
outside, Pat. They're cold. When they're
oh,
inside,
okay.
there's no red. When
Is that
my
it
true? Oh my God. I
in
missed
my
it.
quick page through the book.
I missed it. Oh man.
beauty
Braga,
trends.
Braga got an arrow in her favorite boob. It sucks.
Is that funny or is it just an absurd line? I still don't know. I don't know.
I think it's all funny.
I
Okay.
think it
Alright.
is funny. And also when you know that Braga like once you are aware that Braga's like transgender, it kind of gives a different connotation to it too. Because
Yes. Maybe.
well, because like it's my favorite boob. And if you're transitioning from male to female, like you don't necessarily grow boobs. You get
I mean,
boobs created for you. So like she had a favorite boob because that one was created better? Question mark.
I mean, it's also a magical world. She could literally
That
have
was gonna
been
be
Right?
my
transformed
that was gonna
into
be
a
my
female
note.
body. Yeah. She could literally have grown this.
She maybe. There is a man who grows mushrooms all over his
Ooh,
body.
there you go.
I don't know
It's a
how
small
much of
step.
my changed. So here's a question I have for you, Pat, actually.
For me,
For you, Pat.
all right, I'm here.
Which of us found this book in 2013 or whenever it came out? Because I feel like we were on it pretty fast when it came out. Like I think it was probably around when it came out first, but I can't remember how we found it.
Well, I'm here. Let's look it up. So it's 2013, you said?
At least that's what is on. That's what Fiona Staples has signed the cover with, as far as a year. Also, wild that you would get a Fiona Staples cover and not credit it, but
At the
whatever.
time. I mean, when did, yeah, so I think we were on Saga already, right?
Saga Volume 1 was.
2012?
Oh, that's volume 11.
The issues started publishing in
Yeah,
March
2012.
2012. So I think
Yeah.
we were already on Saga, and we were probably just in that ecosystem.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if this is one that you found and then we read it, or like Kat found it somewhere and then we read it,
I
or
don't think it
like
was
I don't
me. I
know.
hardly ever am on the pulse for this thing.
I don't know. I don't know how. I don't think it was me. Like I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. So the mystery remains, I guess. I was trying to figure out whether we could clarify that or not. Like part of that is just I don't know whether on this read it's just I've changed as a person since reading it the first time, or knowing the background of like all the behind the scenes stuff and that feeding into my reading of it. But like
Yeah,
again, you were saying the same thing, Pat, of like I'm like a little bit more sour on it. It's still fun. Like it's action popcorn fun.
yeah.
Comic book, good times, female protagonists, shooting the shit and bonding.
I
Like
mean,
it wasn't there in the same way that I feel like maybe it was the first time I read it. I don't know.
for sure. And I do think future things built off of this, at least the vibe. I can certainly see how Critical Role took notes from this because just how the characters interact is very similar.
Well, yeah, and like, well, spoilers for the recommendations section. We might even be there. I don't know how much we have to say still about it at this point, but like, Adventure Zone, very similar
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah, the
Silly D&D
tongue-in-cheek,
adventures, yeah.
yeah, adult D&D. We say the F word. We're
So this is actually the other big point that I did kind of want to talk about. So I have
yeah.
one more thing to talk about, I guess,
You
is like
lied. Oh
you
no.
said you said adult D&D, and I was thinking about this specifically like for the podcast in contrast to Die. Because when we were talking about
Yeah.
Die, you and I talked about kind of like differing reasons to play D&D, or like styles of playing D&D, and like
Yeah.
Die is very much like role playing as therapy, whereas this is very much the other role playing, and the one I think that you said you were more into at the time is like this is role playing as like fantasy empowerment, right? Like this is we are badass female characters doing badass female character things. Look, we killed a troll. Woo! Like it's that sort of style of role playing, not the
Yeah.
like
Well, I'd
examining
say
deep personal introspection questions role
yeah,
playing.
Die is a drama. I would not say Rat Queens is a drama. Like I
No,
think
Rat Queens is
Dee's
very much a
story
Fast and the
gets
Furious movie.
yeah, like Dee's story and maybe even a little bit of Violet's gets like deeper, but never truly to like a drama. Yeah, this is just fun as opposed to oh,
Yeah, they
yeah.
have the
Put them
makings to
through
be
hell.
very dramatic. A twin brother who was always very brave, and Merida from Brave,
Mhm.
with Violet's. Maybe that's why I'm into Violet too. She's Merida.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about with Merida and Brave?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
If you could change your fate, would you do
Yeah.
it? If
I'm
you could turn your
planning.
mother into a bear, would you
Would
do
you do
it?
it? Um,
Yeah, I know
for
her.
I'm getting into like concert season soon for my kids, and I love the song "Touch the Sky" from Brave, and so I
There's
found an
songs in
arrangement.
that?
Yeah,
What?
it's when she's writing, I will ride, I will fly, touch the wind or chase the wind and touch the sky. So it's like a Celtic
There
like
aren't any songs in
carol.
there.
It's
There
beautiful.
definitely is songs, Pat.
I don't. I watched it once. So this is a weird thing I'm watching. If you could
It
turn your mom
oh,
and your three brothers into bears, would you do it?
it made me cry.
Pat, you gotta stop.
Like, I was in theaters and I was, like, crying, and I'm like, "She loves her mom so much, but they don't understand each other, and because she doesn't understand her mom, she's gonna lose her."
I don't know, Susie. It was a big nothing for me.
All right, guys, it seems like we don't have a lot more to say about this comic. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about for the comic, or should we move into our recommendations?
Of almost any comic we've read, that's not true. But of the comics we've read, this one has strong of its time, right?
It was probably really good back then, but nowadays, and also being the ages we are, I don't think it resonates with us the way it would have back then when we were, like, what, 23?
Yeah, I'm 11 years closer to being old lady Bernadette, and I can feel it in my cynical, unadventurous
She just
bones.
wants to have a store that doesn't
She
get
just wants her
windows
fucking
broken
store
every
to
time.
work.
You know,
God damn it. Betty
being
breaks the
a
window on her way to apologize for
Again?
breaking the window, which is a good gag.
Betty.
being a middle school Catholic teacher for 9 years, I think I am Old Lady Bernadette.
There you go.
Like, why can't I just have nice things?
Eventually,
We
you
live long enough
either
to see
die
ourselves.
later
Yeah.
or you live long enough to see yourself become Old Lady Bernadette.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But
Recommendations, you guys got any?
I think I do.
Touch the Sky by Brave. I'm watching just Brave.
Not a
By
fan.
Brave?
You're just making up
By the
ridiculous
musical
things.
artist Brave.
By Brave.
Maybe listen to Brave by Sarah Bareilles too, if you're
Brave
into that sort of
songs.
female empowerment thing.
I can kick
Gosh.
off the actual recommendations section.
Perfect.
There's so much D&D adjacent stuff. I think if I was gonna lean you towards something that way, though, I'd probably push you towards the Adventure Zone comics as a comics.
Mm.
That feels like it's probably the cleanest fit from here to there. I liked the podcast. I haven't really read the comics as much, so I don't
Simon
know.
has all of them that are
The
printed
comics?
already. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
I have
usually
bought
they
them for Ryan Profit, and I don't know whether he's read them or not, so.
they
That's
usually
my
release
brother, and me, guys,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They usually release around his birthday or
McElroy's.
like Christmas, Valentine's Day. So Simon, I believe, is up to date on all of them.
Convenient
Simon
books to buy.
yeah. Simon also like religiously listens to their podcasts and also like watches their like YouTube shorts and YouTube videos and Twitch streams. So they are around our family quite a bit.
Nice.
The other recommendation I had just as like a similar cool female characters hanging out vibe. It doesn't fit with like being a D&D thing, but if
Mhm.
what you want is just like the vibe of like intelligent female characters hanging out, shooting the shit, like Giant Days is like
Mm.
the very best book for that. It's very good. It's just like three students at college in Britain hanging out. You go through like all of their years of college, they get into shenanigans. It's fun. It's a good time.
I would recommend, I mean, like I was saying, Critical Role feels a lot like this. Like a lot of what they do is very reminiscent of Rat Queens. If you've got all the time in the world, you could watch / listen to the actual campaigns themselves. I would say campaign 2 is easier to digest than 1, and 3 is weird. I don't know what he's doing now, but they did just do an Amazon animated series. So if you
Yeah,
want a
that's
concise,
fantastic.
and it does feel a lot like Rat Queens.
Yeah, it has moments.
Otherwise, a more digestible D&D watch along kind of thing is Dimension 20 does Fantasy High, which
That one's
is
fun.
really good, and they're just doing the junior year of Fantasy High, and it's very well done.
God, what a great conceit, D&D but high school.
Yeah,
It is.
and
It's really funny too.
Brennan
Like
Lee
they had
Mulligan does
yeah.
the dungeon master, and he does a really good job of like the
I'm
world
in.
just makes sense. It's great.
Yeah, and like at one point they're battling a lunch lady who's made out of like mystery meat.
Well, there's like
I
a
remember that one.
corn
Yeah,
gremlin
that thing too.
golem. Yeah, it's great.
Um,
It's good
and
times.
they do like tropes like that you see from like traditional like 80s teen movies, which is fun. Um, and then there was another one that they there was a version I thought that they did where it was more female empowerment with that Dimension
There's a
20.
spin-off one where there's a whole
Okay.
thing about
Yeah, because
So if you
we
get into it, there's a whole world you can dive into, but
yeah,
it's not as incredibly massive as Critical Role. It's
no.
12 episodes that are 4 hours a piece, as opposed to 100 episodes that are 4 hours a piece.
Yeah,
So
I think that's why like we watched some of Dimension 20 for a little bit was that it was just easier to digest.
mhm.
I mean, we have what 3 posters right here that I'm looking at that are all
Yeah.
of Critical Role in our living room.
Hey, if you're into
Um,
Critical Role, it hits hard. So
for me, recommendations. I
mm.
like if you like D&D stuff and you like silly D&D stuff, like the newest D&D movie was a lot of fun.
I would agree.
Yeah, I had
And
that on my possible recs list also because it feels similar in tone.
it just feels fun and silly and like, I don't know. For like girl headstrong comics, sometimes I feel it's hard to find good girl headstrong comics. I had also gotten like Black Canary at this time,
Hmm.
and it was like the newer version. I hadn't gotten into it much because I have so much copious free time,
Yeah.
in my life. But I feel like even if you look at um, the more traditional series with women empowered, like even when you look at the relaunch of Wonder Woman and stuff like that, there's female characters that have like that headstrong attitude that you could do. And obviously, I love me Sailor Moon. That's fun. I always recommend Sailor Moon. Go back
Got
to
it.
it. And
Got it.
Fables. If you like the storytelling aspect of this and the like background characters that you get to learn more about, definitely that happens in Fables, where you get little comics about individual characters. Like if you want to learn more about them.
Sure.
I don't know if I have anything else.
That was like
Well,
5, Suzanne. You're
I was gonna
good.
say
You're
we've
covered.
given them a smattering of everything, so we're good.
Yeah, right. We got a lot of different things, and
And don't forget
obviously,
"Touch the Sky" from
Touch the
Brave.
Sky from Brave.
Yeah.
Just put that
By the
on.
musical artist Brave.
And then, I mean, if
God,
you
I'm gonna have
really
to link
want,
it in the stupid show notes now, guys. We talked
You know, I
about it
might
now.
just have the song softly playing this whole time while
like
we're
as we go in the
talking. I don't
background,
know. Yeah.
there's really beautiful instrumental versions of it.
Oh,
Like,
great. Well, I'll
it's
look it
just
up.
If
great.
you use less than 6 seconds of it, Pat, it can be the outro
No, I'm gonna
music.
find the horrible recorder version of it so I can play it in its entirety.
No,
Someone's gonna have done that.
I'm
Otherwise,
sure
I'll
there
have to get a
is.
recorder and do
Play it. Great. I think that's gonna do it for this month's discussion of
it.
Rat
If you could
Queen.
play "Touch the Sky" on
As
recorder, would you
always, if
do
you want to
it?
get in touch with Pat or me, you can email us. It's waiting on the. I'd just do it like a pirate or something. I don't know. You can email us at waitingonthetrain@gmail.com. You can find more comics related goodness at mattreadscomics.com. Suzanne, thank you for coming on and talking about this very weird, like, I don't even know what to make of it still after we talked about it for 45 minutes, like amorphous kind of book, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
talking about it with you.
yeah, it was fun.
We're gonna get a solid comic out of you one of these times. It's gonna be
I
like,
know,
oh, that
right?
was fantastic, beginning to end.
Suzanne,
Oh,
I want to
hey,
shoot for an A on the next one.
hey, when we did Fables, we liked Fables.
Did we, Susie?
I love
You should
Fables.
listen to that episode again.
Did I? I also love Sailor V though.
Sailor
Yeah.
V
Yeah.
was good. Sailor V was good.